Chapter 3. Graduating Hogwarts hadn't been a problem for Hermione. She had taken it easy and done it without much trouble. Ron didn't return to Hogwarts as he had been offered a place in the Aura office by Kingsley. Harry still hadn't returned and Hermione doubted that he ever would. All of that meant that Hermione was alone for her 7th and final year at Hogwarts. Well, Ginny had been there, but she left after half a year, which was due to an argument over the holidays between Ron and Ginny. Hermione had overheard their argument outside the burrow. Ron had warned Ginny about Lazarus, saying that he was only bad news and whatever he had told and given Ginny was lies and empty promises. Ginny defended her boyfriend and told Ron that it simply wasn't any of his business. Nonetheless, Ron insisted that Lazarus had ties to dark arts and that Ginny would be going down the same path as Lazarus if she continued with their relationship. Afterwards, Ginny slapped Ron right in the face, and Hermione knew she had to intervene. She had tried to stop them, but it was too late. What Ron said afterwards was simply what led to both the breaking point and point of no return. Ron's voice dripped with venom, each word laced with bitterness and contempt as he spat. It's all starting to make sense now. This so-called relationship between you and him is just a sad attempt to fill the void that was left when Harry abandoned you like yesterday's garbage. You're nothing but an empty shell, fooling yourself into thinking you've moved on, but deep down we both know you can't survive without him. And that ignited a fire. Ginny tried to hex Ron, but he was ready for it and blocked it. Hermione rushed forward, trying to physically place herself between Ron and Ginny before things escalated further. Ginny's eyes were wild with fury, her wand arm shaking as she tried to aim another curse at Ron. But Hermione grabbed hold of Ginny's wrist, forcing her to lower her wand. "Stop it, both of you!" Hermione's voice was firm, cutting through the charged atmosphere. She turned to Ron, her expression pleading. "Ron, please! You know this isn't helping anyone." She then turned to Ginny. "Ginny, let's talk about this calmly." But Ron's face was twisted in anger, his words biting as he glared at Ginny. "You'll thank me one day when you realise I'm right. He's not good for you, Ginny. He's just using you." Ginny wrenched her arm out of Hermione's grasp and took a step back, her chest heaving with emotion. Then he appeared behind her. His green eyes fixed upon Ron. Lazarus stepped forward, his presence was chilling as he faced Ron with a cool, calculating gaze. His voice was smooth yet carried an underlying edge of danger. "You speak as though you know me, Ronald Weasley, but I will not deny it." He closed in on them as the rest of the Weasley family appeared behind them. "You see, Ronald, the dark arts are inevitable. You cannot stop them even if you tried," he explained as he looked at Ginny. "I've shown Ginny what I can do and what she can do, how we can restore the world." "Restore the world?" Ron scoffed incredulously, his wand hand tightening in anger. "Absolutely," Ginny responded without hesitation, then shifted her attention to the rest of the family. "George, Mom, Dad, I can bring him back. I can heal our family," she said with an almost cheerful, yet slightly unhinged tone. Hermione was uncertain about what Ginny hoped to achieve with her remark, but the response was one of silence as they simply gazed at her. "That's impossible," Ron finally exclaimed. "It's all false." George stepped closer, now standing just a few meters away from her. "Ginny, Fred is gone. He's never coming back." His voice trembled with the weight of his words, tears streaming down his face as he spoke. "No, George," Ginny shouts, her voice cracking with desperation. "I can bring him back, I know I can." Her hands trembled while dark sparks were leaving her fingers. George took a step back. He looked at Ginny in shock as he realised what was happening. Behind Ginny, Lazarus was just smirking. "Ginny, calm down," Ron said as he went towards her. "We'll find help for you." "I don't need any help," Ginny lashed out as her movements were intense and a dark lightning hit Ron right in the chest, causing him to fly several meters as he crashed into the burrow. Hermione rushed towards Ron and noticed that he wasn't breathing. She instantly panicked and turned towards the others. "He's not breathing," she yelled out. She leaned in towards his chest and listened as she realised that his heart was still beating. George rushed over to help her. Meanwhile, Ginny was looking distraught as she had unintentionally hurt her brother. Mum, don't look at me like that. I didn't mean to do it. It wasn't intentional, I swear. She was almost crying as she desperately called for forgiveness, but Molly Weasley turned away from her daughter. Her voice shook with emotion as she pleaded with her father, her hands trembling at her sides. Please, Dad, you know me. You know I could never do something like that to him. I couldn't live with myself if I did. Tears welled up in her eyes, betraying the depth of her sincerity. She took a deep breath and continued, desperation evident in every word. I wouldn't ever kill him. You know that. You need to leave, Ginny, and when you... Don't come back, Arthur Weasley replied. He didn't even look her in the eyes, but his voice was filled with sorrow. Ron was rushed to St. Mungo's and hadn't awoken since. The healer's explanation is that a layer of dark magic is above him, which restrains him, making his coma an inescapable prison. And what had followed was another hard time for everyone, but with graduating Hogwarts, Hermione hoped to be making a difference. She had to find a cure for Ron. She had researched all year, but had found no answers as to how Ginny could do magic without the use of a wand, and why it was as powerful as it was. But one day, as she arrived home at her newly bought apartment in London, she went into the living room, and there he suddenly stood, looking at her with those emerald green eyes that she hadn't seen for over a year. Harry Potter had finally returned. But why?